And we're back with whatever episode this is. Season 6, Episode 12. Spice Up Your Life. This is the episode in which the friendship map is fixed, so they go with Pinkie Pie and Rarity to Canterlot, and they find a restaurant where the daughter and father are having a bit of a friendship problem. But it's okay, because they work it out, and everything works out, and we have delicious Indian food. The end. Also, I was going to say this in chat, but then I realized there's no reason to. So to respond to Act directly, I actually think Pinkie Pie and Rarity have a good dynamic. Because Pinkie Pie is ridiculous and over the top, but also has a tremendous flair for the dramatic, which Rarity just kind of naturally flows around. This episode is a good example of that, really. The two of them just kind of... They don't bounce off of each other, they don't fit each other, it's more like they gel around each other is the type of dynamic they have, and I think it works pretty well. And it worked pretty well back in The Gift of Maud Pie as well. So, this was a little bit of a palate cleanser. I mean, it's not the best episode ever, but I do think there's some decent stuff to talk about here. First thing I want to point out is notice that people cannot stop bringing up Starlight's torrid past. Now, I know I just talked about this today, about how we shouldn't forget the past, but there's a difference, again, between not forgetting it and banging on about it all the time. I actually specifically said that sentence when I was during Lore Week today, and this is banging on it all the time. Not out of universe, in universe. This is getting to the point of actual rudeness, and again, this is going to come up in the future with regards to Starlight's character arc. Now, as usual, Starlight still has a talent for remixing magic, which will also show up in the future. And the episode has this really great premise that is totally wasted and thrown away in seconds. Hey, the map hasn't been giving any episodes this whole season, half the season now, because the map has been broken by the time travel episode. Think about that for a second. What is this map? Right? This thing is a literal I forget the whole chain. We talked about this. This map is a manifestation of the realization of the dynamic of how the harmony works within this setting. It goes from the originals to like the seed to the tree to the gems to the people to the map. Like it's a solid line of how harmony has been developing in this setting for some time. It is directly connected to what I refer to so often as the pattern. This thing, I don't even know who that is, Bragwin, but okay. Baron wanted a link, so if you want to toss one to him. Anyways, so the idea that this... See around us, heroes. The idea that this map is broken, that its connection to the pattern and to harmony is such a fascinating world-building concept to me. The idea that it can't... Because the whole point is, this is the GM. To put it into just blunt, absolute, basic terminology. This is the GM of the setting saying, there's a friendship problem here that you should interact with. And the GM knows, and we've talked about this so many times, the GM knows who to send and where, because if it sent other people, the actual problem, the core problem wouldn't be fixed. This has come up constantly. So the GM knows what's going on and knows the correct answer, just like the map does. Yes, Subicom, I have. That not for a long time, though. So the idea that the map is broken just makes me go, oh my god. Is it because it was connected through time? Is it because it was is it still connected to all those other alternate realities which were all broken? Does it have to do with the type of time travel that was being used? Is the anchor the problem here? Maybe it needs to be reignited. Maybe it needs it, and all of that's just gone. Total wasted plot. Thank you, Jason Power, as always. Very, very much. I will put that towards Valhalla in a second, because I don't even have the document up right now. Usually people don't donate during these, so... Now, I need to talk about lazy, terrible ponies, so I'm going to bring up Darth Mandora again. No, I'm kidding, I'm kidding. Anyway, so plot thrown out the window, whatever. They mention a few locations as the map orients itself with reality, reconnects to reality. Appaloosa, which comes up in a future episode this season. Las Pegasus, which comes up in a future episode this season. Yakistan. Now that actually is going to come up in a future episode, but I don't know if I don't think that's this season. I think that's a future season when that's going to show up. But that is also going to come in the future. And then Twilight's Castle, which I don't think anything happens there, but I know it, Jason Bauer. I do appreciate it, as always. Thank you. I don't know if they were doing that on purpose, is what I'm trying to say. You know, because that's what I would have done if I was writing this. I would have each of the spots be one of the spots that they're going to have a plot around in the next, you know, rest of the season, rest of the episodes. Anyways, so is it next season? Okay, because yeah, it's the one where the Axe refuse help and Pinkie Pie has to help them without asking to help them. That one. It's actually kind of an irritating episode, but we'll get to that when we get to that. Okay, so it is next season then. I believe it. Right off the bat, they get to Canterlot, and we have the theme of the episode right there on display. Now, I point this out because in contrast to the previous... Let's ignore how much I despise the previous episode for a second. Difficult to do, but let's ignore that for a moment. Even from an objective perspective, because there is such a thing, to go what Weads was talking about in chat earlier, there is such a thing as objectively looking at something. And objectively, one of the biggest problems with the previous episode, Floater Brothers, was the fact that the central theme wasn't present in the work until pretty much the end. There was no establishment, in short. There were no bricks on the floor, and then they just tried to make something without bothering, which, that's funny, the episode was constructed in the exact way that the episode's theme was against. Huh. Here, the theme starts off right off the bat. They get to Canterlot, and Rarity's like, we need to do this, this, and this. And Pinkie Pie's like, wait, no, we should do this. And Rarity's like, okay, well, since we're both here, why don't you go ahead? We'll follow your way. And Pinkie says, that's okay. Well, give me some advice. And so Rarity says, okay, well, how about these options? And Pinkie picks one of the options, and they both pick. Both viewpoints are present, and both people are involved in the process. And what we get is a greater result because the two people tried. Disagreement on approach, finding common ground, IDIC. That's the theme of the episode right there, IDIC. And yeah, that's right off the bat, like I said. Now, I've theorized for a while about why Rarity, of all people, would go along with this three hooves thing. Because, you know, this is not Canterlot music. I could probably... Hang on, let's get some Canterlot music. I actually could customize a little bit. I mean, I've got all my playlists here. What would be good Canterlot music? Let me think about this for a second. It needs to be like a fancy town. Yeah, I'm thinking something from Warcraft, because Warcraft has plenty of fanciful cities like this, but what I think would work best... this. I think you're right, Savacom. God, I love Legion's soundtrack. Can't wait to review Legion. If for nothing else, because I get to play Legion again. So, yes, Dalaran does have a song. Don't worry, I'll play that next. So they're in Canterlot, and Rarity goes along with all this. Why? Well, let's think about this. First of all, this might be me being excusing too much, but she's really big into social currency. Now, I've talked about the whole idea of social currency and social credit, social economics, for years at this point, or at least 2 years, ever since we started the MLP Streaminations, because it keeps coming up with Rarity and Canterlot in specific. But this is yet another example of this. She is so into this and so invested. Her credit rating is so high that if she sees someone else with a really high credit rating, then the automatic assumption is that that person is worthy of listening to. Now, the thing is, this does make sense if it's valid. See, this is the interesting and fascinating part. This is actually why I got into economics. No joke. All the way back when I was like 4 or 5. No joke, really. Because, I don't know if I've told this story before. Please forgive me. I was thinking, well, but money's fake. Money has no value. Because it doesn't. And it didn't make sense to me. Hang on. Let's switch songs. Let's just go to Dollar. That's a much longer song anyways. It's going to be in this playlist. There it is. Money makes no sense to 4-year-old or 5, I think it was 5-year-old me, because it has no value. So I started studying economics. This is the fascinating thing. Something economically can have value for several reasons. But one of those reasons is because everyone agrees that it has value. Now, that's actually a very complex topic, and something that we're not going to get into right now. But this actually applies in other aspects of life as well. Tactics, for example. Why does this pass have relevance to both sides of an army, both sides of a war? Do I not have water? Oh god, I don't have water. This'll do! Why does it have relevance? Well, maybe because it's a strategic positioning. Maybe because it allows for good ambushes. But maybe it has no useful resources and no useful terrain and no nothing. But why is it still valuable? Well, because by total coincidence, this army was going this way and this army was going this way. So two major armies of a competing nations happened to meet here. By the way, if you want a real-life example of this, Gettysburg during the American Civil War. Extremely strategic important. Arguably the battle that the entire American Civil War hinged on. No relevance whatsoever. But it was given relevance by the fact that the people involved all agreed that it had relevance. Because they could have just left. Or they could have dodged or avoided or adjusted the battlefield, but they decided this has value, and so the other side agreed this has value, and thus it has value. Now, what does this have to do with the episode? Let's bring this back. Even when it comes to social economics, someone saying something has value and a lot of people agreeing with them means it does actually have value. It may not have tangible value. It may not have practical value, but it does have value, just like a dollar bill does. Sense make? So, forgive me for going off on this topic. You know how much of an economics geek I am. But this is why it makes so much sense to me that Rarity would presume value here. Especially, and this episode establishes it, given the fact that she's never tried this food herself. She never says that, but given her reaction to the food, I could say with 100% certainty Rarity has never eaten at one of these restaurants. Probably because she's usually busy on business, or not in town. Because remember, she doesn't stay in Cantaloupe. She's got Sassy for that. So having not encountered it herself, she automatically presumes the value of the food. And it is really for the exact same reason that people presume that Rarity has value when it comes to fashion. Now, this is a brilliant example because Rarity does know fashion. And therefore, that social currency has legitimate, tangible, practical value. Whereas the other one... Yeah, she did. I'll talk about that in a second, John. But the other one, what's her friggin' I wrote down her name. Zesty Gourmand does not have practical, tangible value. She just has presumed value. Sense make? So, this then leads to them going to the first place. Now, she likes the presentation. First thing she comments on. Sean already got there, but first thing she comments on is the presentation. Hey, and then she eats it, and it's... Oh. And she's clearly like, oh, I've got to like this. Like, everyone else likes this. Surely I have to like this too. But, oh, it's just, oh. And she clearly does not enjoy the food, which is important. Pinky, of course, hates it. Duh. And now we got to get off on our second topic of the episode. This is actually the primary theme of the episode, which I'm going to talk about right here. Because, remember how I mentioned how they objectively established the theme early? Well, this is them reinforcing the theme by inverse, by showing the opposite of the theme. Because what is the opposite of IDIC? An echo chamber. Now, I just talked about this when it came to Pokemon Black and White, so it's a little fresh in my memory. But this, people like to throw that word around, or that phrase around as a bit of an insult. Echo chambers, blah, blah, blah. But an actual echo chamber is a horrifying thing. The episode does this mostly as a gag, but it does still show exactly what a successful echo chamber looks like. Because as the swipe happens, as we go between the three restaurants, they look near identical. They're not actually identical, but they're near enough to it. With the same food, with the same presentation, with the same styling of the decor. Yeah, it's a literal recolor, for God's sakes. That's an echo chamber. Now you might think, oh, that's just a joke. That happens. That has happened, is currently happening, and will continue to be happening in the future. That is what happens when an actual, real echo chamber is allowed to successfully exist for too long. And we know these restaurants had to change because at the end of the episode we see several of the owners of those restaurants, the chefs involved, who talk about the kind of food they used to cook. So this is something they adapted to. Now, this is also... let's move forward. Let's move on to the next step. But that's the main theme, the idea I see. Different perspectives, different ideas bouncing off of each other and making a greater whole, which is something they're going to continue to reinforce throughout this episode. So, allow me to say very clearly that this episode is objectively better than Flutter Brothers. Not a joke. So, she goes to the rustic, clearly Indian restaurant. There's an elephant on it, for God's sakes. Clearly Indian restaurant. And, rustic hasn't been rated. So we can't go in there. It hasn't been rated yet. Only real... And then she goes in, it's like, I don't know, the decor in here is kind of strange. They haven't even been good enough to get a review at all. That's worrisome. That is, once again, the downside of social currency. Let me be clear. I actually find the concept of social currency fascinating and to be what I would consider to be a positive thing, within reason. And I mean that. If social currency and that kind of social economics didn't exist, the very concept of getting a recommendation from someone else or reading or understanding a review and all of the attached aspects of society that are attached to those concepts wouldn't even exist. And I admit, it just occurred to me just this very second that I'm a little bit biased because I'm a reviewer. But I stand by my statement. I do think that it's the kind of thing that works within reason. But this is the flip side. I'm not even sure I'm going to deal with this because, it's not even rated. And yeah, Echt is correct in his own way. The fact that the food hasn't even been given a rating at all, I'd hesitate to eat there. And I'm not that into social currency. I don't have, it's more accurately, I don't have the social credit to lose that Rarity does. So I would still be hesitant to eat there. How many times, let me really bear this point down to something nice and down to earth. How many times have you tried to buy something on Amazon, and one of the first things you've been doing to help decide whether or not you're going to buy that is scroll down to the bottom and read the reviews? How many times have those reviews been spot on? How many of the times have those reviews been completely wrong? And, of course, the big one, how many times have those reviews altered your decision on whether or not to buy something? This is also true with the Google reviews thing, Google Maps, whatever that's called. Let's go check out this place, this restaurant. Hang on. I'll pull up an actual restaurant here. Give me a second. In fact, I'll pull up a restaurant I know is great, and I've been many times. Give me a second. I don't remember the name of it, so you gotta give me just a second here. Here we go. I know where it is. Okay, so let's say I'm going to this place that I'm not going to give the name of. Let's look at the reviews. Okay, this place is reviewed pretty well. Let's find a bad review because that's what I'm really looking for. Whoa! You don't want to hear that song. Here, have some Zelda music. Here we go. Owner waited until we were outside waiting to go home to complain to his workers that quitted on him because they didn't feel like we tipped them enough. The service wasn't all that to get tipped that much. This is really badly written. Multiple people had to ask for their drinks. 15 people there, paid $200, felt entitled. Food was okay, not great. Server wasn't helpful, very rude. Location is inconvenient. Service has gone down. They incorporate urban music. Spend your money where it's more appreciated. The food tastes awful, lacks genuine flavor. Try more herbs and spices and less salt. Okay, you're getting my point already here. You're getting my point. Now, again, that doesn't always prevent you from going to a place. But you can see how it's relatively easy to look at... I don't know what urban music is. It's relatively easy to look to see how a bad review or an absence of a review can influence your decision making. And I point this out, I don't know why I'm defending Rarity here, but I point this out to show once again how Rarity's perspective isn't wrong or bad at this point. We'll get to that in a minute. So this is still doing pretty well here. It's just showing, you know, why people haven't been eating or why the restaurant has been failing. So, no, Rarity is me, Medoro. Maud is my favorite, followed by Starlight. Actually, I think Starlight has taken over as my favorite, having gone back through this series with analysis mode on. Thankfully, S.A. Ross isn't here to hear that, but I mean that sincerely. I think Starlight has become my new favorite, so it's probably Starlight, Maud, and then Luna, then Rarity. Anyways, the point of all of this, though, is she's unwilling to try the new place. I was making this whole point to make a point. She was unwilling, she was hesitant, she was... Ooh! That says so much. Because it's true, isn't it? Like the restaurant I just listed, which I have been to multiple times. I took my mom there when she came to visit. And it's awesome food. Reviews and that kind of social currency, social credit, is something that is valid, but it can't be the end of the line. That is another very important point here. You cannot take a review as absolute gospel. You can't. Because if you do, well, I mean, demonstrably, provably, hundreds, if not thousands of times, it's something that's going to prevent you to interact with something that you would like, that would have worked, that you would enjoy, right? So Rarity gives it a try. Ooh, and it's good. Holy crap. Now, the funny thing, yeah, exactly, Act. The funny thing here, of course, is this also is something that can be taken to an extreme, which we don't want to do. And yeah, I saw you say that, Weout, sorry. I have two, actually. Including this, I might add. This is terribly reviewed. We'll see if it works all right tomorrow. Anyways, what's something I know worked that I tried out that was badly reviewed? Pokemon Sword and Shield? You're exactly right, Lord Harriman. But the point is, if all you're using to decide is the review, then you're screwed. Especially since so many places are reviewed, or so many things are reviewed by so many different people so differently. Let me use a direct example. I'm sorry, I am a reviewer, so obviously I'm a little bit involved in this episode, but I want you to look up a review for Octopath Traveler that is not mine. Then I want you to look at my review of Octopath Traveler. And I think that's a good example of one because I was substantially different than most people on that one. Assassin's Creed Odyssey would be another good example of this. It's all just kind of a judgmental act. Not judgmental, it's a judging act. You have to just kind of judge in the moment based on the review and the reviewer and your own preferences in order to decide whether or not you're going to try something. This, again, is why I like this episode, because it makes the point that if all you do is treat the one review by one person as absolute gospel, then no, and that is wrong and incorrect, and that is shown fairly clearly, and because that is wrong and incorrect. Speaking of which, please pay attention to my reviews as if they're absolute gospel. Now, even I don't push that agenda. I'm not apologetic about my reviews, and I do give across my opinion, but I've had many people disagree with me over the years about my reviews. Like, recently, I was playing through Pokemon Sword and Shield, and I had someone pop into chat who hated Pokemon Sword and Shield, and was actually saying, this sucks, to something that I'd given a positive to, right? Anyways, getting a little off topic here, but I wanted to respond to Lord Harriman, because this leads to the next big thing. Okay, so we've got the big point. Oh, wait, no, I wasn't done with the topic. Damn you, Lord Harriman. Damn you! Must destroy. This whole idea of trying something new should also not be taken to an extreme. You shouldn't always try new things, right? Sometimes you go to a restaurant, for example, and that doesn't look too great. Maybe you shouldn't try that place. I don't know. Like I said, there's a judgment act. But again, I mentioned this because I've heard some people, who are idiots, use, I think this is the strawman argument specifically. I forget. There's actually a list of all of the incorrect arguments and how to not use them. This one's, I forget what the names of all of them are, but this one specifically is the one where you say, okay, if you're always, if you don't know it, you don't know it, so therefore you can't say it's good or bad. And therefore, you don't know that shoving chips in your eyes is bad, so you can't say it. Like that thing, right? Because you don't know it, you can't have an opinion on it. Because you've never tried it, you can't have an opinion on it. That thing. Usually taken to an extreme. That's when it becomes a fallacy. Because I'm pretty sure I wouldn't enjoy having chips shoved in my eyes. Even though I've never done that, I can kind of guess that based on the information available to me. I know what a chip is. I know how much salt is in it. I know what salt feels like. Starlight's my second favorite pony. Wait, my first favorite, sorry. I know what salt feels like in the eye. I've had that happen. I know what something sharp in my eye feels like. And I know how sensitive my eyes are, and just general things about biology and physics. So with that information, I can safely say chips in my eyes would suck. But you see my point. And I use the chips in the eyes argument specifically because people are stupid and have gone to similar extremes. Well, you'll never know if you don't try it. I think I can judge within reason. This is also something that's come up in my real life a lot, not just with regards to anime and alcohol, the two biggest things this comes up with, but also video games. I cannot tell you how many times someone has said, oh, you should play such and such, and I'm like, no, I'm not going to like that game. And they're like, how would you know you haven't played it? Because I'm aware of that game. You know, I have never played Binding of Isaac. And I never will. I will hate that game. Because I have enough information to judge that, right? Sense make? Anyways, way off topic. Let's get back to the episode. So they decide to have Rarity help with presentation. Awesome! And content. No! And then Pinky goes out to help gather people. Awesome! By focusing on using her down-to-earth appeal. No! I love this because both of them do the thing that on the surface level makes sense, but they apply it completely wrong. So they both screw up. Also, very minor point, but you notice Pinky and Rarity don't actually get into a fight over this, even though they easily could have, and if this was back in Season 1, they totally would have. Just wanted to point that out really quick. Yes, S.A. Ross, this episode is going to be higher rated, objectively, than the previous episode, as we've been talking about. This leads to the It's Gonna Work song. Now, this is, I actually think, the second biggest flaw of the episode, the It's Gonna Work song. Hear me out for a second. The song's neat, you know, that's not the problem. In fact, I still need to rate it. Let's put it here. Because it's a good song. But the song is the second worst part of the episode. You know why? Because Rarity is wrong, and Pinky is right. Let's fix this, because I never like to criticize without critiquing. What should have actually happened here is that Rarity should have been trying to get them in the door, and Pinky should have been trying to get them to stay. Right? In other words, Rarity is flat out saying, be like everyone else, and Pinky is flat out saying, be exactly you, when in fact both would have actually been helpful in this situation. If we get the reviewer in the door and we get the rating, and the good rating, this is, I don't know why I'm still playing Zelda music. Screw it, let's go back to Dollarin. Let's go back. Yeah, exactly. This is a surprisingly gray situation. It could have been a thing where Rarity helps to get them what they need to get started, and Pinky helps them to get what they need in order to keep going, right? Instead, Pinky is flat out right, even though she's failing miserably, and Rarity is flat out wrong, even though she's failing miserably. I feel like you're right, Imperial Star Destroyer. And again, this is, like I say, the second biggest flaw of the whole episode, because it kind of hurts most of the narrative, especially since Rarity is the one who champions the idea of doing your own thing and actually having real flavor later, and throws this all in Zesty's face later. Metaphorically, as opposed to the literally here. So, they fail. Everything goes bad. And then we see Zesty for the first time. Can I just say Zesty looks like a villain? In fact, she is. How many of you have seen a kids movie from the 80s and 90s? I guess I should raise my hand on this because obviously I have, cinemaphile and all that. You know what I mean when I talk about this kind of antagonist. It's the one who isn't, like, actively malevolently malicious, but they're a jerk. And they're a jerk, and they're a jerk, and they're a jerk, and then they get their comeuppance. That pattern is so... This is why I pull out the 80s and 90s specifically. That pattern is so common, you could set your watch to it when it comes to those films in many cases. And that is her to a T. She is a jerk consistently throughout the whole episode in multiple, varied ways. And then she gets her comeuppance. And everyone laughs at her. Or no, actually, no. Sorry. I'm saying the wrong thing. Everyone cheers when she leaves, right? Yeah, to use a contrast, the critic in Ratatouille, who, by the way, turned out to be one of my favorite characters from that movie, no joke, that is a fantastic and surprisingly excellent way to make an antagonistic critic and still make them an engaging and interesting character. And yeah, Mr. Martin from Willard is another excellent example of this archetype. I say kids movie because it's usually in kids movie. It's in plenty of other stuff. Yeah, and that is the problem. Miss Gourmand is a caricature. She is a one-note character. Now, I've said this before. A one-note character is not necessarily bad. Voldemort is my go-to example. I also tend to use Sauron. Both of them are very one-note characters. And they're both villains. But it is possible to make a one-note character and make them good. This is not how you do that. So, she shows up, looks terrifying, just terrifying, and refuses to actually do anything with this. Then, this... Tyrek. Actually, you're right. Tyrek is a one-note villain. You're absolutely right. Unlike someone like, say, Discord, who is a three-dimensional villain. Well, was a three-dimensional villain. Tyrek is a one-dimensional villain. He is one note. Still engaging. So, they have their argument in the back, and this is interesting because Pinky says something. This is, again, the episode kind of floundering a little bit, but she says a line. What kind of food expert doesn't want flavor? That's insane! Here's the thing. That's the other side of the coin, and the episode doesn't address this. This is the biggest flaw with the episode, by the way, is the way it handles Zesty. Hear me out for just a second. Because what Pinky is saying is your opinion is wrong. Now, this gets into some seriously gray, depends entirely on the circumstances territory. But in my opinion, in this exact circumstance, Zesty's opinion is not wrong. It is how she is applying it that is wrong. Forcing everyone else to do the echo chamber, wrong. Insisting everyone adhere to her standards, wrong. Having her standards, okay. And I mean that. Now, again, that only applies in this case. It doesn't apply universally. But I bring this up because, again, Pinky doesn't adhere to that. Rarity tries to reach out to her a little bit towards the very end of the episode in the final scene, but now I'm going to move on. This then leads to the episode floundering again with Zesty again, because what happens is she is rude again. In this specific circumstance, what she says is, and I quote, because I wrote this down, "When it comes to fashion, you are adequate." Excuse you, lady! Ignoring the obvious fact that Rarity is kind of a fashionista, and has demonstrably known what she's doing with fashion since Season 1, there's also the fact that she has the practical and tangible application of that fashion. 3 successful boutiques across the country. Piss off! Again, rude, rude, rude comeuppance. See the pattern? So, the other problem here, by the way, is this is called the straw critic. Seriously, that is I looked it up. That is the actual term for this kind of archetype. It's a critic who is supposed to be a straw man. And for those of you who are not aware of what a straw man means, it's supposed to be an obvious target that is wrong, that it's okay to hate on or bash on. That's the point of that. And she is a straw critic. So, then she has her line. Anyone can make obvious... I didn't write down the whole speech because it's long. But anyone can make obvious taste, but only a true artist can make subtle taste. That's arguably true. And I mean that. Because cooking... God, there's so much nuance and complexity to cooking. Too many people seem to think that piling flavor on is the way to go. Just keep adding stuff. It's not. You need to look at what contrasts and compares with what, and try to make matches, right? You want to make things that complement each other. You want to make things that develop a new flavor because of their combination. That's kind of how cooking works. You want to be able to bring flavor out of a specific thing, and so forth and so on, right? So being able to cook something that has a subtle taste is legitimately hard, and I don't want to dismiss that. The problem is she's being an elitist twit about this whole thing. I'll even say that, speaking as someone who is a little bit of a food geek, okay, a lot of a food geek, I can actually understand her style and taste. No, seriously. Good presentation and small amounts of food that have a very subtle flavor. Now, what's the point of that? Can anyone tell me? Because there's actually two. 2 good points. Let me clarify. 2 actual, real good points to that. Not elitism, not, being a twat, just actual validity. I still don't have water. As I reach over to my water thing and I just see this giant thing of Dayquil, and it's like, I'm not drinking that. Nuance? Balance of flavor and texture? Appreciation? Not quite getting the answers I wanted. I'll just tell you. Reason number 1, it is the appetizer, effectively. It is something you put out there while the rest of the food is still being prepped, so that they can appreciate the presentation of it and have a little bit of something that just kind of makes sure that their palate is completely nice and neutral. Hence the blandness and the general lack of strong flavor. Similarly, you can utilize it for the exact same purpose as a bridge in the middle of 2 larger meals, like, say, the beginning, the soup salad versus the actual main course, or after the main course but before the dessert. You can use it as something of a palate cleanser, because it gives you a moment to get right back down to nice and neutral. And again, appreciation of the presentation, right? Yeah, as Stabby Keith, however, points out in chat, the problem is she wants that to be the entire meal. Now, I keep bringing this word objective up, because even though I don't do objective reviews, I do extremely subjective reviews. Objective reviewing, objective consequences, objective perspective does exist. And I can say, objectively, that her perspective on food is wrong. Because what she insists on is that one little palate cleanser thing that has small portions, so it's not nutritional. It doesn't do anything after the palate is cleansed, so its purpose is wasted. And it probably costs too much, but let's leave that on the door for a moment. And thus, objectively, is incorrect. You see my point? Now, again, if she just likes that kind of flavor, sure, but not how it's being utilized. And once again, we see how, while her perspective, her opinion on flavor is not wrong, it is how she is applying her opinion on flavor that is wrong. It's the same thing, just in a different mentality here. And of course, there's all the elitist garbaging going around here. Because this is elitist garbagey. So forgive me for going off on these topics. Like I said, I have a lot to discuss here. I want to add something. What's interesting about this episode to me is there's an unspoken backstory here that's hinted at several times in this episode. And that is that Saffron, who, by the way, did you notice her cutie mark is a crocus flower? If you don't know, a crocus flower is used in the making of saffron. That's just cool. So the unspoken backstory is that Saffron really wanted to do two things. She wanted to cook for people, and she wanted to cook for people in Canterlot. And it's implied that her father tore through everything to make this happen. Like, managed to get a spot in Canterlot, and managed to get the resources and funding to get out here, and managed to get her and him out there, and they're making her dream happen. And it's just kind of a cool backstory that just adds a little bit of extra flavor, pun intended, to the entire episode. There's implications there that this is something that she's been wanting for forever, and that he has been trying to make happen for her for forever. Thus, the idea that they finally get out here, and he is very defeatist. And this is, again, there's hints throughout the whole episode. And he's very defeatist because, well, I managed it, and I did it, and now it's going to hell, right? And yeah, of course, Rarity and Pinky, honestly, would really understand this. Pinky loves to make other people smile, and Rarity knows how hard it is to make it big in the big city. Or one of the big cities. I mean, she's done this twice now. You get my point. So, they swap jobs. Rarity uses her social credit to get people to visit. Because that's how that works. And Pinky helps with the decor and the cooking. Because that's how that works. And just one quick swap. Oh my gosh. So then... Did you notice Mr. Food there, by the way? Mr. Food Pony? He actually has a line. I don't recognize that many food people, so I didn't recognize anyone else in the crowd, but it felt like there was a... Was Gordon Ramsay there? I didn't see him. Or Ramsteed, excuse me. That's hysterical. I wonder who else was there. Anyways, I saw Mr. Food, because I used to watch his stuff a little bit. This leads to, the denouement, which would have worked so much better if they had done something more. Like I said, she's the weakest part of the episode. We cannot tell what other people to eat, but neither can you. Maybe you should try the food and see if you like it, and her response is to leave and get cheered at her. She gets her comeuppance, right? It's the end of the note. I wish it would have been so much better if they had tried to actually showcase the episode's theme in that final bit. But I was thinking about that. And it occurred to me that the episode kind of was. I just don't think it was doing so on purpose. Now, the episode doesn't get credit for this. But again, there is such a thing as people who are wrong, as I've already demonstrated with Zesty twice in this episode. There is such a thing as being wrong. Even with something like an opinion. Even with something like a subjective opinion, right? And so the episode, unintentionally, reinforces its idea of IDIC. Again, the primary central theme, infinite diversity and infinite combinations, because all those different perspectives and all those different ideas all work, right? Wrong, because not every perspective should be a part of the group. Not every idea is valid. Not everyone's opinion is worth listening to. This is something that way too many people miss, especially in real life, but this also comes up in fiction. Sometimes someone does need to be ejected. And the easiest way to explain this, and I hate to go to Hitler on this one, but the easiest way to explain this is Hitler. Hitler's opinions and perspectives were not worth listening to. He should not be part of that IDIC. His opinion should not be valid. He should not be listened to. And yeah, this came up with Pokemon Black and White. Again, I just talked about this. Getsies is someone who should not be listened to. Who is someone who should not be a part of the group. Who is someone who should not be a part of this IDIC thing. There is such a thing as cancerous people. History has proven this time and time again. Thus, those people should be removed from the equation. Or horribly killed. But what I mean is that they shouldn't be considered part of this. Everyone is worth listening to. And I don't want to get too political, but I bring that up because especially in the last 2 years, there's been a big trend for some reason that everyone's opinion is worth listening to. And no, it's not. Just wanted to... This is also come in when it comes to my life personally, because I'm a bit of a moderate in most things. I know, shocking. And one of the biggest accusations that tends to be leveled at me is that I think everything's good. And that's not true. Because the funny thing is, even moderation needs to be taken in moderation, as I've said many, many times before. Because sometimes it applies, and sometimes it doesn't. It really is a case-by-case thing. Someone like Zesty didn't change her opinion, and someone like Starlight did, to use a direct, in-universe, relevant to MLP example. Case by case. You know? Now, of course, you're saying, well, how do you tell? And the answer is, oh, you guess wildly. Or flip a coin. Hang on. Let's see if we can redeem Savacom. Afraid, Savacom, but you are unredeemable for wanting me to play... Oh, where'd it go? I put it over there, didn't I? Yeah, I think I did. My copy of Final Fantasy Tactics showed up a couple days ago, because I didn't own it. I do now. But yeah, in all seriousness, Zesty just walks away like a petulant child, sounds familiar, and doesn't learn anything. Yeah, Luna, well, Luna's kind of a weird case, but Discord is probably a much better case. Discord is a good example of someone who was willing to change his mind, was willing to be a different kind of person, and did actually, it was worth listening to. You know, he's someone who should be included in the IDIC. I mean, do I still have that graphic up? That'd be funny if I did. Oh, looks like it's not there anymore. Sorry, did I say Final Fantasy Tactics? I meant Suikoden Tactics. Sorry. I must have misspoken. Did I get rid of the image? Yeah, I've never even played Suikoden Tactics, so I have no idea. Funnily enough, I do own both copies of FFT. Because if I ever talk about FFT, I'm going to say FFT. I'm not going to say Final Fantasy Tactics. Not that you'll remember that, but it's still true. Looks like I got rid of the image. That sucks. Anyways, whatever. Let's update the counter. Because we forgot to update it last time, and by we, I will take ownership of that on myself. The Want-Was are up. Oh, no, I already did that one. Sorry. But continuity counter went up twice from the last episode. And I guess that's it. Actually, FFT is not on the funding list. Would you believe it? Or if it is, I don't have any memory of it. What's a want-wa? Really, Mr. Red? Oh God. All right, Mr. Red. It seems you've learned your lesson about stealing from other people. Yes, I have. Slowly steals from lore. Hey, cut that out. Sorry, had to try it one last time. Wah-wah. And fade to credits. That's a wah-wah. It's something I am personally very against, probably because I used to watch Star Trek. But, TOS has that in spades. Almost every episode of TOS has a wah-wah ending. I hate it. Anywho, let's rate this sucker. So this is an episode by Michael Vogel. No idea who that is. He has done Hearthwarming Tale prior to now. I do agree that while this episode has some absolutely fascinating things to talk about and some legitimately interesting ideas and concepts, the episode itself isn't really that great. It does have, some cool moments. It does have two things that really drag it down. The song, not the song itself, but what's going on during the song. And Zesty herself, which is just a one-note caricature. But there is some good stuff here, so I'm kind of leaning towards average or above average. I'm seeing a lot of averages in chat, so I'm willing to give it an average. I think that is a good rating for this one. It's not bad by any measure. It's just it doesn't have anything really going for it, other than the ideas we could talk about, which the episode itself doesn't really get credit for. The biggest thing elevating this episode for me is how it utilizes its theme. AKA the fact that it, actually structurally was a well-constructed theme that was built up throughout the course of the episode. And that's good, but that's the best part of the episode right there. I do also think Rarity and Pinkie Pie are pretty good together. I will say something, by the way. I didn't talk about this already. The way that Pinkie Pie eats is actually kind of gross. I lost some of my some of my appetite for lunch watching her eat. You know, how she just kind of vacuum seals to the... Oh my god, Pinky. Chew your food, Pinky. Anyways.